"Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you," the boss laughed, then froze when she learned he owned it. James arrived early, as always. While most of the building was still dark, the fluorescent lights of the maintenance floor flickered to life with a hum. He slipped on his navy blue uniform with the embroidered patch, James W. in simple, faded lettering, and began his rounds through Falcon Dynamics' gleaming headquarters. To everyone else, James was invisible. He tightened bolts, replaced flickering lights, swept corners no one ever noticed. But his eyes, sharp, quiet, always watching, noticed everything. The hushed conversations behind glass walls, the nervous interns trying not to breathe too loudly in the elevator, the way senior executives barely acknowledged anyone below their rank, especially Emma Caldwell. Emma was a storm in designer heels, executive director of strategic operations, respected, feared, ruthlessly intelligent and intolerant of anything she deemed average. She passed by James often, but never really looked at him. Once, she handed him her empty coffee cup without saying a word. Another time, she stepped into the elevator he was already in, then stepped right back out, as if proximity might stain her silk blouse. It was no secret Emma had no patience for non-essentials. That Friday, Falcon Dynamics hosted a rooftop mixer to celebrate the launch of a new prototype engine. Champagne flowed, jazz played softly over the speakers, and the city skyline glittered as the sun dipped below the horizon. Employees mingled, laughing nervously in small circles. A polished company helicopter sat at the far edge of the helipad, more ornament than aircraft. James had just finished checking a wiring issue in the rooftop lighting. He was heading for the stairwell when he heard her voice, sharp, amused, unmistakable. "Hey, maintenance man," Emma called out, turning heads. James paused mid-step. Emma stood with a small entourage of executives, drink in hand, her smile wide and wicked. "You look bored. Why don't you entertain us?" A few chuckles followed. James didn't move. Emma gestured toward the company helicopter behind her. "Tell me, James, you ever flown one of these?" The laughter got louder. A few phones discreetly rose into the air, ready to capture whatever humiliation was about to unfold. James met her gaze, but said nothing. "Oh, don't tell me," Emma continued, mock curiosity in her voice. "You're one of those self-taught geniuses, a hidden talent. Well then, why don't you prove it? Fly that bird." More laughter. A young executive nudged another. The pilot, standing off to the side, raised an eyebrow. Emma sipped her drink. "I'll make it interesting. You pull it off, really fly it, you get a $50,000 bonus. And hey, what the hell, I'll marry you." The crowd roared. She leaned in slightly, her voice just loud enough. "But if you crash it or can't get it off the ground, you resign. Today." Silence. Not even the jazz could soften the tension that followed. James took one slow step forward, then another. His face was unreadable, his posture relaxed. He looked at the helicopter, then at Emma. "I accept," he said. Gasps. Nervous whispers. One man muttered, "This is a lawsuit waiting to happen." Emma blinked. For the first time, uncertainty flickered behind her eyes. "Wait, you're serious?" James didn't answer. He walked toward the helicopter, hands in his pockets, like it was something he did every day. The pilot stepped forward, ready to intervene. "Sir, I don't think—" James held up one hand without looking back. "It's all right." A mechanic moved to stop him but hesitated when he saw James flipping the switches with practiced precision. The blades began to spin. The crowd fell completely silent. The rotor washed the rooftop in wind. Champagne flutes tipped, hair whipped. Emma shielded her eyes, watching from behind a veil of disbelief. And then it lifted. The helicopter rose into the air like it belonged there. James maneuvered it in a wide, elegant arc around the rooftop. Not too fast, not too flashy, controlled, smooth. A circle, a hover, a pause. And then he brought it down, landing with the kind of precision most commercial pilots dream of. For a moment, no one moved. James opened the cockpit door, stepped out and walked back across the rooftop. Emma stood frozen, her smirk long gone. Someone dropped a glass. He stopped in front of her. "I'll skip the bonus," he said quietly, "and the marriage offer." And just like that, he walked away. Phones were still recording. The jazz had long since faded out. All that remained was a city full of blinking lights, and the sound of egos shattering in the silence. By Monday morning, Falcon Dynamics was a wildfire of whispers. James, the maintenance guy, had flown the corporate helicopter like a seasoned pilot. Emma Caldwell, their unshakable executive, had been silenced in front of half the leadership team. Videos spread quietly through internal chat groups, screen recordings, slow-motion replays. Even employees in the overseas branches were watching. Who was he? Rumors bloomed like mold in the shadows. Maybe he used to be a pilot. No way. I heard he worked for NASA. I bet he's ex-military, special ops. Or maybe he's just a genius pretending to mop floors. Emma sat alone in her office, blinds drawn, laptop open. She scrolled through security reports, HR files, internal logs, anything with James's name on it. Nothing made sense. He had been hired 6 months ago through a third-party vendor. No formal degree listed. No prior work history in aviation or engineering. Just glowing performance reviews from middle managers who praised his punctuality and quiet professionalism. There was no way a man like that flew a Bell 429 like he was brushing his teeth. She opened LinkedIn. Nothing. No social media. Not even a trace on Google. Her pride itched like a rash. Emma prided herself on knowing everything about everyone in her orbit. Control was her currency. But now, she felt like she'd been played, and in front of the very people whose respect she'd spent years cultivating. Across the campus, in a nondescript conference room away from glass walls and watchful eyes, James sat with 3 men, older, sharply dressed, and clearly not part of the regular Falcon Dynamics executive crowd. One of them, a tall man with steel grey hair and a presence that suggested military roots, leaned back in his chair. That was one hell of a statement, James. James offered a half smile. Wasn't trying to make one, just tired of the noise. Another executive chuckled. Well, mission accomplished. The board's already buzzing. They want to know if you're ready to move. James's face turned serious. 6 months, he said quietly. That's how long I've been on the ground floor, watching, listening. It's worse than the reports. They nodded. They knew. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, photos, incident summaries, emails printed out in full, anonymous complaints, exit interviews, notes from late-night conversations with interns too afraid to speak publicly. Emma Caldwell's name came up over and over again. Dismissed complaints, meetings where she ridiculed junior staff, departmental cultures built around fear and compliance, not innovation. And she wasn't alone. Some of the other executives either looked the other way or benefited directly from the culture. Projects that should have taken 6 months were being dragged out to 2 years because people were afraid to challenge bad leadership. Innovation had flatlined. Falcon Dynamics looked shiny from the outside, but inside, it was corroding. You know, James said slowly, I used to think a toxic work culture was a symptom, but it's not. It's a virus. It spreads, and it survives because people at the top protect it. One of the men tapped the folder. What are you planning? James stared at the Falcon Dynamics logo on the back wall, the stylized Falcon, sharp, sleek, airborne. It's time, he said. I'm stepping back in. No more playing janitor. The men exchanged glances and nodded. There was no argument. It had always been the plan. Months ago, James Wren had made a private decision. As the sole owner of Falcon Dynamics, he could have cleaned house from the top down with a memo. But that wouldn't have revealed the full extent of the rot. He needed to see it for himself, not as a CEO, but as one of them. So he'd shed the title, shaved the beard, and donned a maintenance uniform. Now, with first-hand evidence, stories collected in quiet corners, and the trust of employees too low on the ladder to speak up before, it was time to lead. That evening, Emma sat on the rooftop helipad, the same place she had made her joke just days ago. The city lights twinkled below, but her thoughts were far away. She was used to winning. She was used to control. But now she couldn't even control a rumor. And something about James, his calm, the way he walked away, the precision with which he flew, nagged at her like a warning. She pulled up her phone, searching again. Still nothing. Then she froze. A photo. An article buried in an old aerospace magazine's archive. Not about James, but about a young aviation entrepreneur, barely in his 30s, who had just acquired a majority stake in a failing jet propulsion startup. The man in the grainy photo wasn't wearing a uniform. He was standing on a runway, smiling, confident. A little older, perhaps, but unmistakable. Emma zoomed in. It was James. Her heart skipped. James wasn't a janitor. He wasn't a pilot. He wasn't even a fluke. He was the one person she'd never thought to fear. The owner. She dropped her phone. It clattered across the rooftop. In the silence that followed, her pride cracked just a little more. Meanwhile, James stood in the top-floor office reserved for the CEO, his office long untouched. The mahogany desk, the panoramic view, the digital control panel, untouched for months. He placed the folder on the desk and turned to the skyline. Tomorrow, he'd call the first meeting, and this time they wouldn't be laughing. The conference room on the 30th floor had never been this silent. Every seat was taken. Department heads, senior executives, legal advisors, dozens of people sat shoulder to shoulder in hushed anticipation. Phones had been silenced. The projector was off. There was no catering, no smiles, no small talk. Just tension so thick it pressed into the lungs. And James. But not the James in navy overalls. He stood at the head of the table in a tailored black suit, clean-shaven, sharp-eyed, unmistakably the man in charge. It took most of the executives a few stunned seconds to connect the dots. Whispers. Is that... No, that's not... But he's the janitor. James raised a hand, not to silence them, but to steady them. I'm James Wren, he said calmly. Founder, owner, CEO of Falcon Dynamics. A few jaws dropped. A few people blinked like they'd seen a ghost. Emma, seated near the far end of the table, stiffened, her fingers gripping the armrest. James looked around the room, his voice steady but firm. 6 months ago I stepped down from this very seat. Not publicly, not officially. I wanted to see who we really are behind the numbers, behind the board reports and glossy presentations. So I put on a patch with my name stitched on it, and I went to work. A long pause. I wish I could say I liked what I saw. He reached for a folder on the table and opened it. Inside, pages of printed documents, photos, anonymous complaints, and digital transcripts. What I found, he continued, was a culture infected with fear, ego, and neglect, one where performance was measured in obedience, not innovation, where abuse was ignored, and integrity punished. He began reading. Not names, not details, just voices. A woman afraid to report harassment because HR was too close to the executive team. An engineer pushed out for refusing to fudge data. An intern told she wasn't executive material after declining drinks with her manager. Each sentence hung in the air like a verdict. Claire, a department lead seated near the back, lowered her eyes. She had heard some of it, suspected more, but never imagined how widespread it was. James looked up. This isn't just bad leadership, it's rot. And it ends now. He turned to the screen behind him and clicked a remote. A timeline lit up, color-coded, cross-referenced, dots, connected patterns of ignored complaints, abrupt resignations, quiet payouts. In the middle of it all, Emma Caldwell's name appeared again and again. Emma rose from her chair, her voice icy but cracking. This is a vendetta. James didn't flinch. Emma turned to the others. Are we really pretending this isn't personal? He was humiliated and now he's trying to rewrite the narrative, let's be honest. James clicked again. A security camera image filled the screen. Emma laughing during a confrontation with a junior analyst, then tossing their report into the trash without reading it. Another click. Emails. Dismissive responses. Sarcastic remarks. Another click. An audio recording. Her voice, clear as glass, mocking an employee during a private meeting. And finally, one last screen. It was a performance matrix showing which teams under which leaders had the highest turnover, lowest morale, and least innovation over the past 2 years. Emma's name topped every list. She sat down slowly, speechless. James turned toward the far end of the room. Claire, he said, Heads turned. Claire blinked, startled. "Yes?" "Stand, please." She stood. "Over the past 6 months," James said, "your department had the highest satisfaction rate, the lowest turnover, and the highest number of internal promotions." Claire's face flushed. "I just tried to treat people like they matter." James nodded. "Exactly." He turned back to the table. "Effective immediately, Claire will join the executive committee as Director of Culture and Talent. A new position, reporting directly to me." A ripple moved through the room. "I'm also appointing an external HR auditing firm. Every department will undergo a full cultural audit. Every open complaint will be re-reviewed. Leadership roles will be re-evaluated based on trust, not tenure." He paused. "This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. And if that makes anyone here uncomfortable, you're welcome to resign now." No one moved. James looked down at a final envelope. "As for you, Emma," she didn't meet his eyes, "you are suspended effective immediately, pending the results of the investigation. You are not to contact staff or enter non-public areas." She opened her mouth but said nothing. James handed the envelope to the head of security, who nodded and exited the room. Then James did something no one expected. He sat down, not at the head of the table, but in the middle, among them. "I'm not here to be the hero," he said. "I'm here to clean up my mess. I built this company. I looked the other way too many times. That ends now." The meeting adjourned in silence. As the executives trickled out, some looked dazed, others relieved, a few hopeful. Downstairs, word spread like wildfire. Claire was promoted. Emma was out. The CEO was the janitor. Employees gathered in corners. Some cried. Some laughed in disbelief. Most just stared at their screens, reading and rereading the official memo that hit inboxes moments later. It didn't feel real, but it was. Back upstairs, Emma sat alone in her glass-walled office. The city pulsed beyond her, but she didn't see it. Her desk was bare, her nameplate already removed. Security entered quietly. One of them placed the envelope on her desk. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we'll need your badge now." The email hit inboxes at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Subject: Termination of employment. Emma Caldwell. Status: For cause. Effective. Immediately. No room for ambiguity, no softened language. After weeks of investigation, testimony, and documentation, the verdict was final. Emma Caldwell was out. And for the first time in a long time, Falcon Dynamics exhaled. But endings aren't clean. They rarely are. And even as the building buzzed with cautious optimism, echoes of the past still lingered. In quiet flashbacks, we see them. A junior analyst, shaking in the restroom after being publicly scolded for a missed decimal. A project manager, tears in her car after being told she was too soft to lead. An intern, silently deleting an email draft she had been afraid to send. Emma's shadow had stretched long, but now it was retreating. James stood on the rooftop helipad once more. The same place he'd been mocked, the same place he had taken flight. This time, though, it was different. Hundreds of employees stood shoulder to shoulder, looking up at the makeshift stage built where the helicopter once sat. There were no champagne glasses, no jazz, just people, and a hush of expectation. James stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "When I founded Falcon Dynamics," he began, "I thought innovation was our greatest strength, that what would make us soar was our ability to build faster engines, smarter machines, stronger systems." He paused, letting the wind speak for a moment. "I was wrong." He looked out at them, not through them, but at them. "Our greatest strength is respect. And for too long we've forgotten that." Nods, some tears. Eyes locking with his, finding something in the steadiness of his voice that hadn't been there before. Not just leadership, but accountability. James continued, "We can't undo the past, but we can build forward, differently, with transparency, with integrity, and with leaders who understand that being in charge doesn't mean being above anyone." He turned slightly, gesturing toward Claire standing just behind him. "People like Claire." She stepped forward, cheeks red, but smile sincere. Applause erupted. And others like her, mentors, not managers, builders, not bullies. Starting today, our culture shifts. Every voice matters, every person counts. From the back, a soft cheer. Then another. It spread, not wildly, but warmly, authentically. The change had begun. Inside the building, emails started flying, departmental restructures, anonymity-protected surveys, open invitations for feedback. A new internal motto appeared on the screensavers of every company computer. Lift others, then lift off. Claire, now in her new role, walked the halls not with authority, but presence. She listened, asked questions, sat with interns during lunch. She wasn't interested in power. She was interested in people. James made himself visible too, no longer a ghost in coveralls, but a leader who hadn't forgotten what the break room smelled like, or how a broken vent hums too loudly at 3 a.m. Meanwhile, Emma faded into the margins. For months, she was unseen, unmentioned, unmissed, until one day, a former employee received a message, just a single line. "I'm sorry, I should have listened." Then another. An old analyst, a quiet manager. One by one, she reached out, not seeking forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. She didn't get many replies, and she didn't expect to. But the act itself was something small, honest, maybe even human. She'd lost her job, her reputation, her power. But she was beginning to find her reflection, and that's where her story, for now, paused. Back at Falcon Dynamics, the hum of the future was louder than ever. But this time, it wasn't just machines. It was collaboration, laughter, confidence that didn't come from fear, but from shared purpose. In the final moments, a new hire stepped into the lobby. Nervous, young, wide-eyed. She clutched a folder and looked around, unsure. A senior executive passed by, smiled, and opened the door for her. "First day?" She nodded. "Welcome. You're going to do great." She smiled. She hadn't expected that. She walked down the hall, passing engineers, HR reps, developers, every one of them nodding, smiling, making space. No judgment, no whispers, just kindness. A new chapter was beginning. And from the rooftop, James watched it unfold, not as a silent observer, but as a leader who had descended to the ground floor to see the cracks for himself. He didn't regret the fall, because now the company was flying. And as he once said, flying a helicopter is a delicate thing. Too much pressure in one direction and it spirals, not enough in another and it stalls. Balance, awareness, respect. That's how you keep it in the air. That's how you lead.